Welcome everyone. As Lenny said, I'm a sensei here in the Dungeon Dojo, and I have been playing a lot during the beta keys. It has been a lot of modifications to the dungeon, so probably that's why that you don't see so many guides yet. People want to probably reconfirm everything before posting. And I wanted to go through a bit the dungeons. I will focus a lot on visuals of the different bosses, and I will give a bit of tips regarding the packs of the dungeon, but I will not go very deep into them. It's about what you need to look about, focus a bit in the packs, but there are so many packs in the dungeon, so I will speak endlessly here, and I think this workshop is about so you have a bit of an overview what is coming. So for the start here, we're gonna see a bit what is coming up this upcoming season. There will be 4 midnight dungeons, which is Magister, Terrace, Maisara Caverns, Nexus Point, Xenas, and Windrunner Spire. And we will have 4 from previous expansions, which will be Algeth'ar Academy from Shadowlands, Triumvirate from Legion, Skyreach from Warlords of Draenor, and Saron, that is a Breath of Bluesky dungeon. One of the tips I want to give to people that want to learn a bit the new dungeons is that next week, on the next reset, you're gonna be able to do the Season 1 dungeons on Mythic 0. So I recommend, even though you have Raid opening up next week, it's a good way to start to see the dungeons before the M+ season comes on March 24th. So next week, you will have all of these dungeons on Mythic 0 difficulty, so you can have a bit of a feeling of these new dungeons. For example, all the previous expansion dungeons that have been modified a bit for this upcoming season. And we will start firstly with one of the old ones. And this one will be Sid from Legion. I think many people have nightmares from this dungeon. And this will be basically one of the hardest ones this season. I'm gonna give a bit of why is it gonna be a bit of a hard dungeon. But before, we're gonna go through a bit the bosses, and I'm gonna say which ones are gonna be kind of a challenge. Mechanically, it's very complicated. You're gonna have to have a lot of patience, and it probably will come a lot of problems. So a lot of patience in this dungeon, I will say. We will start with this first boss, okay? I hope you guys see the gifts. The Seamate is a pool that it will come on a random player. It's this one that you see here at the bottom of the screen. This will drop a paddle, which is basically here up here. So yeah, it will also leave this boss to create this paddle. So the most that you can do is if you know that you're gonna have that circle, it's just running away because it's gonna basically clutter the whole room. Another mechanic that is gonna be very hard to do is the oozes. He's gonna spawn 2 ads, as you see here in the GIF on the side. During this mechanic, you can CC ads or basically DPS them, because during this mechanic that you see in the middle, that is basically the crushing void, all the oozes will have increased speed, and you don't want them to reach the boss, because basically it will create a huge AoE and will basically wipe you. Another very important mechanic in this boss is the null palm, which is basically a frontal, but this frontal is not a tank frontal, so this will basically target any random player. It will basically spawn a cone in front, and you just very move away. So the most important thing in this boss is to manage the clutter in the room with the paddles on the sides, and DPS or CC the ads, and do not let the boss soak those ads during the crossing void mechanic. We are gonna now pass to the second boss. I will later on discuss the trash mobs, very like short. But this boss, he has 2 pets and the boss. They share health, so you can DPS them down. All of these 3. The main mechanic here is that you stack as a player. Basically what happens is that it will spawn these little orbs on the player. So if you are a ranged player, I do not recommend to be far away, because if you see here in the GIF here, it will make them to spawn very far away. And we will have what is called this phase dash ability, which is basically what you see here in the GIF here. What it does is removing the orbs, and it will also create a dot on you. So you need to be very careful during this to use a defensive. It's very important to like get rid of all the orbs, because during overload, it will do the boss an AoE, and it will explode all the remaining orbs, creating as well a dot. You can also like soak the orbs using an immunity, or if a tank also can soak them. But it's very important that these orbs are absolutely cleaned up before the overload mechanic. Regarding the ads, it has a cat, which basically will jump on people. This will cause a bleed on the player that is being pounced on. And it just basically heal that target or like use a defensive. And the other ad is like a prey, and it does like a dread screech. It's very important during this boss, just focus on that ad to interrupt it. As you can see here, it's the only mob that you need to focus on interrupt. And it doesn't do very often, so it's very easy to keep track on. Now we go with the 4th boss. This boss has also very mechanics. A lot of orbs will spawn from these rifts. You need to be very careful, because these orbs, if you soak them, it will create a dot that is a lot of the damage, and it basically is very easy to take a few and you can die from them. They will spawn randomly across the room, and they are very easy to not touch them. But what I can say is very easy, like during the boss, to focus on DPS and come suddenly from all places that you can see. During this boss as well, it's very important the umbral tentacles. As you can see on the, I don't know, here, on the top corner here. They will spawn randomly in the whole room. So on this boss, it's very good that you focus the ones that are very far away. And there is a reason for that. They do Mind Flame, which is basically, as you can see here, it does a lot of damage. And as well, it's very important to clear the furthest away, because later on we will have what is called the collapsing void mechanic, which basically the boss will create like a void wave that only will leave a short, a very little room in the middle to stack. So if you can leave the ones near like the last and focus the one that are the furthest beforehand. During this mechanic, the collapsing void is the one that is the heaviest damage intake you're gonna take. So I will recommend to use your healing CDs and defensive for this. There is no other part in the boss fight that is gonna be very heavy damage apart of the mind flays from the tentacles. So I recommend to stack and to basically use manage your healing CDs for that phase. And the Mind Blast is basically a cast. The boss will cast for the tank, and it's basically interrupted, so it doesn't take so much damage to tank. And now we go to the hardest boss in this game right now, this season. It's very hard to visualize it because the room is very dark. But basically, this boss will have nodes, as you can see here on the left. These nodes ramps up, and basically you will take more damage the longer it takes. So you will have a mechanic here on the right, which is basically 3 players will have like a wave here, and you will have to aim these ones to the active nodes. You have to silence them all, or at a count of 6. So the boss goes into a phase where it takes increased damage. This is where you will save all your DPS cooldowns or your bloodlust. So at the beginning of the fight, do not use anything important, because the most important phase in this boss is during the ramp increased damage phase. During that, it's very important as a healer to heal all the time. There is a problem here with that. There is a fight that you're gonna have to move a lot. Not only because the mechanic here on the right to silence the nodes, you have to move yourself as well. It also has a disintegrate mechanic, which is basically is gonna spawn 3 beams, which will rotate around the boss. And this happens very often. So you basically will have this mechanic on the right, follow up with the other one. So it's a lot of movement in this fight, and I will heal all the time and use defensives, especially during the heavy movement fights. It's very important as well that you have to have a very lookout in the room here. The reason is the boss will also rotate randomly these nodes. So basically what will happen, if you see the nodes in the beginning of the fight like this, they will move around as well. It will do a movement. So it's not fixated, the positioning of these nodes. So you will have to take a very look around, especially on the image on the left, to see which ones are silenced. So the one here in the bottom is when it's silenced, and the one up is when it's active. So as a player, when you get this silencing beam, you have to target the ones that are here, active. And this is all of the bosses from this dungeon. I wanted to lift up a bit the trash area. The first boss, you will have to clear the whole room there before you can spawn the boss. And most of those mobs will create a health absorb, but also it will create a root mechanic that you can dispel. But you can also, as a DPS or healer or tank, can use a movement ability like freedom, shift, forms, tiger lust, or any movement ability that remove roots, you can also remove this debuff, and it's very important because it's like a dot as well. So you mitigate a lot of, you help a lot the healer by doing this. And on the second area, you will have to kill this Rift Warden in the picture. And the big issue that this Rift Warden has is that it's attached to the Rift. Meaning that your tank should never pull this mob far away. Pulling this mob far away will cause it to enrage, and it will pulse AoE damage, which will basically kill you. It is very important this, because many times that we have tried this dungeon, we didn't notice at first, and it is there are a lot of packs around these rifts, which probably tanks want to pull, and they don't notice, and they pull the Rift Warden very far away, and it ends up killing us. And regarding the third boss packs are alike the boss mechanics with the orbs, so it will spawn this kind of rifts that spawn these little orbs. So the main problem that you need to look at in that area is basically those orbs. And this was this dungeon. If anybody have any questions or anything they want to know or anything regarding this dungeon, we can have a couple of minutes in case something they want to know about or clarify. Okay, we're going from another void dungeon to another one. And this one, I think many of you probably have already been playing a bit, and it's the Nexus Point Xenas. This is one of the new midnight dungeons. We will go through the Chief Corbright Cast Rest. This is a dungeon, this is a boss that is, it will have beams across the boss fight. And you will have a debuff that you can see here in the GIF in the middle. And is the reflux charge. This debuff stays if you don't clear it with the lines. So, and it's basically a dot. So I recommend not only to save up for the room and make some room, to use these lines to clear your debuff. It will always spawn new lines randomly, so it's basically the main thing is to make some room and clear your debuff. During Core Spark Detonation, this is the one that spawns in an area, and it's like a swirly that turns into a knockback. I would recommend to position yourself in a place where you don't get knocked in a line. In M+, the lines will basically one-shot you. You won't be able to pass through them. They will kill you. It's the knockback in this detonation will also create a huge AoE, which is basically a time where you also use a defensive, because during this detonation, it will create the Spark Burn, which is a heal absorb, as you can see on the frames on the right. And that the healer has to heal, or you have to immune it. But it's something that until you're not heal off, this absorb will be there. And it's at specifically after the knockback. So it's very important that you are topped, and then afterwards, you have the defensive running. So when this knockback happens and the heal absorb, you don't die. And it also, during this boss fight, it will be very space with these paddles. Many of the tanks that had done this in dungeons, we go through whenever you finish in this room to the edges, because this will spawn on players, this battle, so you cannot like avoid. They only spawn on your feet, like under you. So it depends where you have been tanking the boss. These battles will be in the room. So it's always the most advised to go through the sides of the room and then leave maybe the middle free so people can go through the lines with the debuff, because the paddles hurt a lot. And the problem with these reflux charts is that basically it will stun you for a few seconds. So if the paddles are there and then you take as well some damage, you can drop very low in keys. Oops. And then we go to the second boss. Well, depending which side you go, it doesn't matter. But Forward and Maisara have a very important mechanic here, which you will save all your damage abilities and bloodlust. And this light scar flare, which is basically the Lothraxion image that appears. Very important during the light scar flare that you are very careful, because it does like a jump before the beam. So that beam will practically stun you for a bit. So just be careful before the light scar happens to not be in the way. And then during this light scar flare, everybody is stuck together in the beam. And then what it does is you do increased damage, but also healing. So it's very important that the healer as well is inside, because you will do more healing and commit your cooldowns. So as a healer, I will practically save my cooldowns for that phase. The other important mechanic here is the circles that you can see here. It's a dot, and everybody in that area will get it. So it's very important that you run away with that. And then during this boss fight, it will spawn as well ads, which the tank will have to take care of and be in the lookout. And just beware that they spawn in a random place in the room. So you need to be very careful and take a very look at, because these mobs does have frontal that basically can kill normal DPS. And then we go here to the last boss, which is Lothraxion. It has a few mechanics to take care of. The main one that it comes like right away at the beginning is the Brilliant Dispersions, which is those circles that spawn on the players. You cannot stack them because you take an initial hit, and then some people use a movement ability to avoid, but it's very complicated, so I will not overlap them at all, because it can kill you if you do that. It will basically spawn a copy of Lothraxion. And then if you get hit, use a defensive, because it does like a dot mechanic, and it does a lot of damage. So I will use during those whirlies a defensive if I have one. And do not overlap them. This copies, what it does is that they do this flicker ability, and it's the arrow on the left here. They will go in a direction, like basically normally is player based. So it will go through that direction and yes, basically avoid it. The main problem here is that you cannot be close to the ads, because they will, if you stand close to one, it will hit you. And in that hit also does like a small dot. So it's very careful with being close to the ads or in the path of the flicker mobility. The tanks will have a Searing Rend, which is like a combo ability. It's like basically it's just hitting you for like 4 times. It's very heavy. I will use and save my personal cooldowns for that. It does a little bit of a knockback, so be careful when you are like close to the ads, so you don't get knocked into them. And also this Searing Rend will cause like a searing in the ground, as you can see here. Don't stand in that. Standing in that golden thing, it does holy damage to you, so just be careful not to be standing in that. And then there is something called Divine Guile. This is like an intermission ability, which is basically he goes into this, he disappears and then he spawns between the copies. And meanwhile, they are like casting something. It is very important that you do not interrupt freely or use an ECC. Every time you CC something, it causes a AoE and you take increased damage. So, for example, if you do AoE CC to 3 ads or something, you will basically die. So it's very important that you are looking for the ad that is low traction, the real one, and interrupt it only him. And this is by searching for the avatar that doesn't have horns. And then you interrupt it, like you see here on the GIF on the right here. You see that it's very hard, but it's important even if you have a hard time finding it, that you are sure you are interrupting the right as an avatar. Here is where during intermission is the time that healers might have to use some CD. It does AoE as long as you don't interrupt it. So it's a pulsing AoE that is happening. But do not be afraid. Like, if it takes a bit long, it's worth it because you cannot live interrupting freely. And it will cause a wipe if you just do that. Regarding this dungeon, there are some things in the trust that you need to take care about. On the path to the first boss, on the path to this boss, rogues and engineering can clear up the traps, those line beams that are in the trash area before the boss. There is a path that you go through either left or right. If you don't have a rogue or an engineer, you go to the right. Otherwise, there is a beam there that it basically you cannot go through. And it is very important you do not pull many mobs there, because there are many trash mobs that those AoE abilities, and as well there is some trans mobs that goes a specific debuff on a player, which creates an area in that player which you cannot like move, otherwise it creates an AoE. So be mindful, like in these packs are like very complicated. You need to be I think engineer 31. If I remember. I can tell you which one was it. The ability of the engineer. I think it does say it in the... Which one is it? Yeah. Yeah, it's in the not on this boss, but before the boss, there are gonna be in the path on the trash mobs. They're gonna have these beams, which you can disarm or disable with engineering. It is important because in one of the paths before the first boss, you can either go left or right. And then there are beams in them. If you go to the left, you're gonna have the need to use a rogue or engineer because there is a one beam that basically crosses the whole path. But on the right side, you don't have to. And this is the path right before the first boss. The other trash mobs are quite straightforward, I would say. The ones that you need to be careful about is the last pack of trash before the last boss, because many of them creates a dot with a cast, which is very hard to keep track, and it can kill your party. And it does as well have some swarms with fixates on a random player, and it does very heavy damage. So I will say I will take care a bit of how much I pull there, because it can, in high keys, it can take a bit of a while to kill those packs, and the mobs cast a lot, and it is a debuff that you can only dispel on one person. So it can be it can cause that some people might die there. And this is basically the whole dungeon. Anybody have more, like a question? Yeah. The Hunter's Mark work. I don't know how long it works, but it does work. As you can see in the, I think in the GIF, he used a mark. You cannot see very well, but it does glitch out for a moment, and then it happens again. So he had the mark, so you can see the red there. Yeah, I don't know yet. They did the ping, though. It worked with the ping before, but the mark, it just glitched out for a second. As in the GIF is one of the last weeks of the key. So yeah. It glitches out for a bit, but if you see something red, it's basically it. Now we're going to the next dungeon, which is Pit of Saron. This is a very complicated dungeon. It has a lot of rush before the first boss. You will have to go through the area to talk to some quarries, and you will have, I think it's in total 4. You will spend a long time going through the first area to clear up the trash. The trash is very complicated. It has a lot of mechanics. I will avoid as a person firstly going there to not pull a lot of mobs. Reason for this is that many of them have caster mobs, which will drop you low if you don't interrupt. Some of them also gives a debuff, and some of them will do a very heavy AoE. Overall, even after some times, we didn't pull so many mobs in this dungeon at once. So I will not. Maybe in the time when you have to commit some cities and last might be, but otherwise than the first pull, I will not pull large packs of mobs. We'll go now through the first boss, Fort Master Garfrost. You will have a room, which there are some forges around. The room is basically a small place, but still big enough to manage. One thing to be important about this boss is that he will choose always the fort you are closest to. So if you go to the right side, it will go to that one. It will never go to the other side of the room. So you already know where the boss is going to go. There are a few mechanics to think about. And is the throw Saronite. This one will place an ore at a player. And it's very important that you do not overlap these two. Before the ore appears, it will spawn a circle. So it is very important that once you see the circle that you move away, because if it one-shots you. Also think about when you place the ores that about the room. The tank will choose one, the most closest one, or like to a wall, or like put this away. And this will leave a puddle. Think about that, which one you want to destroy as a tank. It will leave a puddle. If you see here on the GIF here, you see it here a bit on the corner. And as well, when this ore breaker happens, it will also appear swirlies in the ground. During glacial overload, basically you will have to hide behind the ore. And this is when you don't take any damage. Any heavy damage. You take some AoE damage, but it's basically it. It is very important that after the glacier overload, which will happen this Cryostomp, this is AoE damage with some swirlies in the ground, which is very important that you move away, but also you take care of the people that have this debuff that they will get in the Cryostomp. This debuff is a root as well, so you will be slowed. So you can use a freedom, shift, or any remove root ability, or just dispel the person. These people will take as well damage from the debuff, so I will take care that they are dispelled as soon as possible. And take care of the Cryostomp, does AoE as well. And do not stand in the puddles. So the main abilities that you need to take care here is basically be smart about where you want to place the Saronites, because it's spawned at a random player. So move together as a group, and be mindful of the room, because the ores will be broken and they will leave a puddle in the ground. Now I'm gonna show you this duo, Ikan Creek. It has been a lot of changes. It did a lot of. We didn't know how this boss worked at the beginning. It was very confusing. But this boss is like a duo that works in two phases. One of them is active. And they will spawn shade shifts, which are basically ads across the room. These are like purple mobs ghosting in a they will do in a circle in the room. And it basically will cast an ability that you can CC. You can stand in the beginning. It's like a root. You can even use freedom to remove it. As soon as the ad spawn is your main job to DPS them down. And as a healer to as well heal, because these shifts will fixate, not fixate, they don't move at all. They will be in a circle around the room, but they will be like casting at a player, and it will basically like people will take heavy damage. So the only moment that I will take care of people is during these ads are up. And there also will be casting this Death Bolt ability, which is basically a cast that will, in high keys, kill people. It's the only cast that you need to take care of. So I will just look for the Death Bolt and see that they are interrupted. You can CC ads too, like you can stun them or like blind them. You cannot move them, but you can like do stun abilities on them. One important thing as a tank to think about here is like the give here down, which is the Blade Smash. This is not only a tank hit, it's a AoE hit around, because it will spawn a puddle. As you can see, the tank has an area that it will spawn a green puddle under him. So I will like not put it in the middle of the room, something that you put on the sides. And you can place them on all over the top ones, all ones. And I will commit my personal on this. The Plague Explosions is another ability that does the same boss, and it's the paddles here on the left. They also have a bit of a like the tank ability in the case of it leaves a puddle. So be mindful that the room is gonna get a bit cluttered with green puddles across the room. And at the same time, it can happen after that this Get Them Ick basically is a fixate ability that this mob will fixate on you. And it's very important that you run away. You cannot tank it. This fixate ability can 3-shot you. So be mindful of the green puddles that you might spawn, as well as the fixate ability. And then we will go here to the Scourgelord Tyrannus. This is the last boss of this dungeon. And you have very important to take care of is these infused piles that you see here. And you will get this ability called Rime Blast, which is basically the gift here on the right. Your job is to go to these infused piles. Not all of them are infused. So as you see here on the left, you need to take care of those that are with the light and freeze them. Rime Blast, basically what it does is freezing those piles. We have another ability very important here, and it's just for the tank, and it's the Scourgelord brand. What it does is basically a knockback which will spawn an area that it will leave the boss. It is very important that nobody's there, or if you see that the tank is getting knocked there, that you run as soon as possible, because the leap cause a lot of damage. And I don't think, I think you can barely die from it if you stand in it. It's very, very important that if you get in knockback, nobody's around. And if you are DPSer and you see the tank getting knockback, that you run as soon as possible from there. During Army of the Dead, basically it's like intermission phase, and the boss will revive the bomb piles. It will cause heavy AoE damage, and also if you have some ad up, be mindful of interrupting them. And on top of that, if there is not enough mechanics, we have two different mechanics, which is Death Grasp and Ice Barrage. These are two individual mechanics, which are different colors that are green and blue, and they will spawn circles around the room. Death Grasp spawn directly on the player, and it will follow up wherever you go. So be careful with that. And Ice Barrage is just in an area. Very important also in the packs in this dungeon, especially on the ones towards this boss, that you will have to go through a cave-ish icy, which is very slippery, and it's like a mini boss, which you will basically drop puddles of ice. Be mindful, those puddles of ice also does damage, and it can kill you. So it's very careful with this mini boss before the last boss. And about the mechanic with the puddle in the floor. And if anybody has any question or like they would like to know something else in this dungeon.
I will note that this dungeon was pretty much reworked since it's from when it arrived in the Lich King. So a lot of the boss fights are different.
Yes. Yes, Maraxus, it has some ads in there too.
Yes, I'm going to assume that based on what's going on in chat, for that gauntlet event and the extra ads, we're going to have to balance killing and running at speed again. Is that what you saw kind of in testing, Crisette?
I think it's a lot of like damage happening. Like I think the main problem there was the one that gives more nightmares to me in my memory was the puddles, because some people tend to like stand in front of the group, and the puddle, the ice thing that spawns under you, it does a lot of damage now, so you cannot afford to stand on it very often. I mean, very long. So that's what I most remember from the gauntlet. The ads feels okay. The only problem are there are two big ads before the gauntlet. And those, they have an effect that it does very heavy damage when they reach a certain XP. So what you have to do is to like even them out a bit, but focus on one at a time. And these are the 2 ads before you go in the cave. Which is Algeth'ar. This is from Dragonflight, so probably some of you have it still recent in your mind. There has been some changes though to the bosses. Not all of them, but some of them. We start with the Overgrown Ancient. This will do the main mechanic Germinate, will be spawn ads, but as well is like a swirling in the ground, which it doesn't knock back if you stand. And as well it can kill you if you take many in a row. It's very important to move together and try to move in the same direction so you don't end up swirlies and you cannot go anywhere. The main reason for this is because those swirlies is where the ads will be. So it's very important that they are all stacked up so you can AoE them down very quickly. These ads are dormant right now, so they won't do anything. So they are basically, you just can clip them down. There will come a branching out ability, which is basically a big tree that you will have to interact because he will cast like a healing spell on the boss. It is also very important, this ad, because this boss will put a dot on everybody. That is the splint bark. It's a physical ability, so you can like pop it or dwarf it. But if you don't have any of those, the only way you can remove this dot is by standing in this green circle called Abundance, which will remove all the splint bark dots from the group. It is very important to do this because it does heavy damage to the player, this dot. So you want to get rid of it as soon as possible, and preferably stand in the circle, unless if you can immune it. This Burst Force ability is an heavy AoE damage, which you will have to commit like some sort of defensive. This will basically do is to wake up all the ads. If you haven't killed them by that, they will wake up and it will basically melee and apply a poison. So it's very important, like the tank has aggro of them, so all the poison goes to the tank and you dispel the tank. And if possible, you DPS the ads before that. While the ads are up during this Burst Force ability, it's very likely that the tank buster appears. I named this because this bark breaker, it will basically chop your tank a bit. It's a very heavy tank hit, which can kill tanks. And the reason for this is that it does apply an increased physical damage taken. And any ads that are up will basically add to that, and it will really drop your tank very low. So it's very important to use a big CD on this, as well as try to kill all the ads before they wake up, so it doesn't do any extra damage to the tank. Otherwise, this boss is practically the same as Dragonflight. So there has not been anything new on this boss. We're going now to the second one, however. This has been completely redone. The abilities are there, but they are different. In the case of one important ability, which is the Deafening Screech. Before, it was just an AoE. now it's a dot. This is basically the biggest problem as a healer right now. It's going to be that ability because it does very heavy damage over time effect on the players. So it's not only the initial AoE, but also the dot that can kill you over time. So I recommend any defensive that you have or any healing to be used here. It does happen every now and then. It doesn't happen as often as before, but it still is, you're gonna feel it like it's a lot of damage. Overpowering gas, this frontal used to be like, I don't know if it was fixated, but now it's random players. I think it was a random player before too, but just in case. So you know this cone like here on the right? It's like it goes out at a random player. So it's not on tanks only, it's in anybody. And then we have as well this ability called Ruinous Winds, which is basically the one that you have to throw the balls to be able to interrupt it. And this happens at 75 and 45% of the boss. You will have 2 sets, which is Wine of Fire. Be mindful, each one of them has a purpose. The Gale one, which is the wind. And this one will create AoE damage, but also pushback. So players will have modes around the room that you can't take. And it's basically spawn tornadoes, dodge the tornadoes around the room. But the most important here in this boss is basically the Firestorm one. You need to very take care of and ask your group for CDs or basically healing, bloodlust and damage abilities, because Firestorm, what it does is stun the boss for a few seconds and it takes increased damage. So you want to have your DPS CDs for this, for the fire phase. Usually people use the fire phase before, like the first one, or a bit later if people don't have CDs. But it's very important in the Firestorm that you ask your group if they have CDs. So you either go in the first set fire or wind. I think the fire depends of if people have CDs or not, or if you have bloodlust up. But it's very important to use it on the fire one. It's only on the fire one that it takes increased damage. You need to be mindful of that. Yeah. The wind, the only thing that you can do is take the modes, right? But you only have it for a few seconds, so. And important for tanks is the dot, that is the rabbit spec. It doesn't do as heavy damage as before in Dragonflight, but it still is an ability that you want to be prepared and use something. But it's not something that you really drop very low. You can basically mitigate it with your CDs. I could say that this boss has become easier in managing damage. The only problem in this boss right now is the Screech with the dot. The other abilities does somewhat AoE and damage, like the tank ability, but it's not like it was in Dragonflight that some tanks could die to the tank ability. It doesn't happen now. It's not that heavy damage as before, so it has been a bit changed in that way. And we have now the third boss, which is Vexamos. It's very funny because in Dragonflight people hated this boss a lot because it was very hard, but now it's gonna be one of the easiest in this dungeon. Main of the issues is no longer overlaps his abilities. So you will always have one ability at a time. The main ability is the orbs, which you will particularly get. It's very recommendable to like let the tank soak them all, or just take 2 at a time. You will have the tank affronto to stay away from the group. It's like a beam of arcane energy. The main damage ability here are actually the mana bombs. These are like, you have to move a bit from the group. You take a bit of damage over time meanwhile until you drop a paddle, like you see in the GIF here. Be mindful with those. It does a lot of damage if you stand in those, so if you can just move away and use a defensive. Arcane Fissure is an initial AoE, which it does a knockback, and it will spawn these arcane paddles on the feet of the players for a few seconds. So just be mindful of those. But they disappear, so they don't stay. The only paddles that stay in the room are the mana bombs from the mechanic here in the middle. They had done that it doesn't overlap anymore, so you don't have to be so scared of it. And the AoE is not as huge as before, so it's more manageable, I would say. It is very straightforward. The Arcane Fissure is energy based. And the mana bombs is the only one that you need to be very scared of, and it's the one that you can see here. You see the circle on you, then you know you need to run away. Now we have the Echo Doragosa. This is the last boss of the dungeon. The main thing that it does is like spawn initially 2 paddles here, like you see here. And then the rest once appears from Overwhelming Power, which is a debuff that will come on players. At 3 stacks, you will spawn one of those rifts, so be mindful of the room. These rifts will also spawn orbs in different directions. It's usually 3, so be careful. If you get an orb, if you get hit by an orb, it will give you Overwhelming Power stack. So if you have 2 of them, and then you get hit by an orb, it will also do heavy damage on you, and you will spawn one of these rifts under you. So be mindful to avoid these orbs. That is called uncontrolled energy that comes from rifts, and it's very important to avoid. It's very important to avoid as well where you are. It's because the boss does an ability called Power Vacuum, which is basically drags you, like grips you in, and it does this big arcane paddle surrounded. You need to run away, but also be careful when you're getting gripped in. You don't like soak any orb or rift, but as you can see, I'm not gonna allow them at the person that I did this dungeon with, but you can see a corpse there. You can't die. So be mindful where you are when you're getting gripped in. It does a lot of damage to soak orbs, so you cannot basically you cannot afford getting hit by orbs, especially during the grip. Astral Blast is one of the tank's abilities, and also the way that the tank gets overwhelming stacks. Be mindful that if you have that tank buster coming and you have 2 stacks of power, you will drop a puddle. It's always here about managing the room. Basically, the main mechanic in this boss is this debuff that spawn a puddle once you reach 3 stacks. There is another for players that are not tanks. Their way to get overwhelming power stack a part of unintentionally soak an orb is by having this energy bomb, which is basically an arcane area around you, which it will, upon expiration in the hit, you will get a debuff. That's how players get this stacking debuff. It also increases damage done to the boss with this debuff. So people try to manage having at least 2 and try not to get 3, because then this overwhelming power stack disappear and you spawn a rift, and then it's all over again, gaining the stacks again. And this is basically the entire dungeon. The packs are basically almost the same. Be mindful in the overgrown ancient, in the big tree area, they pull a lot at the same time, which causes a bit of problem sometimes because it causes a lot of chaotic pull. The bird area, the mobs sometimes have the issue that when the tank are pulling the trash birds before the bird boss, sometimes the birds does an ability that is a frontal cone of wind, which is can kill you. It's a tank ability, but also does a knockback. Sometimes when these birds are flying down, they do that and you cannot see it, so be careful. Always be behind the birds. And the trash mobs before Vexamus. They made them easier to manage. Not the ones in the area, but I mean in the path to this boss. But be mindful as a tank, these mobs are very heavy on tanks. So be careful with those. They do a nasty combo on tanks, which drops can kill you and drop you very low. And now we're going, if nobody have a question, we're gonna go to Skyreach. I'll give a minute if somebody wonders something. I know during Dragonfly, people will skip Rush during the first 3 bosses, but they have been changing a bit the packs and stuff, so there are no skips. A part of the ones that you do on the path to the last boss, that you try to minimize the packs there. Even we try to go to this area that is a bit on the edge, that sometimes they will reset. They don't work either. They jump on you. So we will go now to the Warlords of Draenor in Skyreach. This also have been changed a bit, especially the tank mechanics how you see them as well. There is some graphics changes, and as well a bit on some bosses, how you see you're gonna see the mechanics. We're gonna start with Ranjit. This is a boss that you're gonna have the most louds at. You're gonna have your time of your life here. Basically, you're gonna see a lot of people being knocked off the platform. The main ability here is called the Gale Search. This will target the random player, and it does a knockback. So as you see here, it will target you and knock you out. It knocks you out very far away. So if you are in the corner of this platform, you will die because it will knock you off the platform. There is also this ability called Wine Chakram, which is here, what you see in the arrow here. The arrow is fixated and it will cast like a boomerang like blade. So it will go in that direction and come back. It does a knockback and it does heavy damage on you. So practically, yes, avoid it. There is something else as well during intermission called Chakram Vortex. These Chakram Vortex are not fixated. They look like it's a column here, but this wind is going to one direction and this circle of wind is going in another one. It's no longer a wall. Like if you have been playing in Draenor, you know that it was like a wall of wind. It's no longer that. Instead, we have circles, and these circles are independent tornadoes that circle in different directions. So there is always one room you can go through. But it's no longer a wall like before. So these look like they're together, but they're not together per se. This tornado is going, for example, to the other side. Yeah, this is the one. The Chakram Vortex is the one. This has been completely changed. It's no longer a wall. Like they used to have like a vortex wind wall like of wind that you will have to follow up, but they have changed that mechanic. So instead of that, you have these circles of tornadoes that circle around the platform. During this intermission with the vortex, you need to be careful because you will get these swords as well. Yes, it's a beta change, so it's a midnight change. So it is only as the expansion launched, it changed like this. It's very important during these tornadoes to be mindful where you're standing, because these scale swords, that the first mechanic that I mentioned, is gonna happen at the same time. So be mindful where you are, because these tornadoes now are not a fixated wall anymore, and they are like circulating around the room. So be a bit mindful where you are, especially preferable if you're a player, a DPS player, that you are towards the middle of the room, and the tank will basically tank it towards the edge of the room. It is basically because of the Chakram Vortex, but yeah. And basically as well to make you room, so you can put the Gale Surges, since these orbs that you spawn will stay for a while in the boss. So to manage the room. we pass to Arachnaths. This is the second boss of the dungeon, and it's basically kind of the same, but they just made like some changes. This is the main one is when it does energize, which is basically the beam that shoots at the boss that gives a stack. You have to stand on it to avoid reaching the boss. It is very important during this that you use a defensive and your healing cooldowns, because the DPS players will take a lot of damage during this. And after it's done this mechanic, it will spawn these cones. This is new. You will have to run as soon as you are done soaking the beam. So be mindful. Another important mechanic to take care of is the Fairy Smash, which is the tank mechanic, which will respawn like a cone in front. So it's very important that you're not close to the tank. Once at that reaching point, we'll cast Supernova. So it depends if you had been soaking the beams. It will do a AoE damage. If you had been soaking the beams, it won't. It will do like initial damage. It doesn't do so very heavy damage, so it's not a big of a problem. But if you have let any beam go through and it has regained and stack, be mindful that the AoE is gonna hit a lot. So it's the only like big damage AoE coming. And be very important that the AoE from Supernova is not that bad. But the biggest problem you're gonna encounter is players soaking the beam, because that's where people are gonna drop low. Now we go to Rukran. This fight is basically unchanged to what you had encountered, surely. It does Sunbreak, which is basically the circle there on the left. It will spawn a bird with fixate at a random player. It is very important that you DPS the bird as soon as possible. It does pulse AoE damage. It does. The only main mechanic thing here is trying not to let it be close to any egg. Basically, when you kill when you in any egg, no, any dead bird, will happen that if you are close any of those, basically it wakes up. So very careful with those around the... It's very important that what we did is we all stack together. So we spawn the bird. Basically this bird will spawn at a random player. So you know, if you are all together, you know where it's going to be. It is very easy to manage it. Other than that, you can stun it, you can CC it. The main problem here is that it's a stationary boss. It's very important that the tank, outside of the quills mechanic, which is you hide behind the pillar, is that the tank is all the time on the range of the boss, because otherwise it does a ability that stationary boss does, this enrage ability, which is basically what it does the bird. It does cast like a AoE quill if you are not in range, and it will kill your group. It's very important as a tank to be on melee. It will do a tank mechanic called Burning Claws. This is the only place that there is some time that you will use a personal CD as a tank. it does a lot of damage. And it's basically just a tank mechanic to mitigate as a tank. And as the gift you see in the middle, it's very important that you DPS the bird. It doesn't spawn any fire or anything, the bird. It just does like a fire around it, like a AoE thing, pulsing. It's pulsing fire around it. So you can tank it for a bit, stun it. But it's very important that you stand behind the pillar during the quells, because you won't be able to leave it. They also, like, before they did these dead birds, but you can see here, are like not the same. They change a bit, but it's very straightforward when it dies, the dead birds not to be close to where you kill them. The gauntlet to this last boss is the same. And the only thing that they changed in this boss is basically the fire beam that looks a bit that you have to manage the room. And it has also an interrupt ability that the boss does to the tank, that you have to interrupt and rotate kicks so the tank doesn't take so much damage from it. This is a cast that goes only on the tank. It's very important. Now they have a fixated. You cannot choose the part that you went into them for the scene in the room. There is a cast down ability, which is basically a bird will drag a player and try to cast it out of the platform. The player cannot move. Basically, it's just being held hostage by the bird, but you can completely use your spells there. So you are, as a healer, if you're being dragged down by the ad, you can still heal, and the DPSers as well can still DPS. It's very important that you DPS the bird. It goes quite fast. And as a player, I would recommend not to be on the edges of the room, because this cast down ability, you don't know who's gonna get it. And it will basically drag you out of the platform. So the inside of the platform you are, the better and safer you are. Another important ability is the Scorching Ray. It will target random players with this, and this is a dot. This is very heavy damage dot, so you will have, as a healer, the job to basically heal them a lot. It's for a few seconds, but it does a lot of damage, and it happens very often. It can stress you out a bit, but just be mindful of those with that debuff, that you are healing them constantly. There is another ability, which is Lens Flare. This is a random player gets this beam. You can see it can happen also on the tank. So this is basically, you see an arrow on your head, and it's basically a flare, and it will cost it will cast on you for a few seconds, but it will increase this puddle of fire, which stays for a long time. So be mindful where you move with that, especially because during the cast down ability, which is the dragging of the mob that picks you up, it also flies on top of that, so you can actually get burned alive with that while the ad is flying you away. So you need to be very careful where you put that laser. And also people don't try to move a lot with that. Move it slowly. You can take a bit of damage with that, it's fine. But it's very important you don't move too fast, because if you run to the other side of the room, basically the beam is quite fast, so you will basically put a lot of fire. And this is this whole Skyreach. Be mindful the trash mobs in this dungeon as the first boss. This is a dungeon that it happens to have like a platform. Especially the first mobs before the first boss. They will have abilities which will try to knock you off the platform. So there is an important cast like Repel that you have to interrupt. And they will have like area circles that also does knockback. So a lot of the trash in this dungeon will try to knock you off the platform, as well as it has some dot abilities and it's wireless in the ground. So it's basically mostly what you will see in trans mobs in this dungeon. It doesn't have a lot of dispel or debuffs mobs apart of bleeds. And basically tanks will have a hard time. These mobs in many of the trash packs are very heavy on tanks. So I will like take care, especially after the second boss, after the first boss, to be careful with big pulls there. Because it's very hard for tanks, and it apply many of those mobs a heavy dot on the tank. It's increased damage taken for them as well. So it's very hard for them to pull very big pulls, especially from first boss to the second one. On the other hand, this dungeon doesn't have many casts. So you won't have a very hard time apart of the one that is the Repel one. I will go to the Magister Terrace. This is one of the midnight dungeons. The trash packs are quite straightforward, but they have a lot like dot abilities. We'll take care of it, and especially a lot of dispels. Many of the dungeons have a lot of like mechanical issues, especially with movement. Especially like all at least in Skyreach, you have to move away, otherwise they kind of like kill you. So we go now to Archonotron Custos. This is the first boss in Terrace. And the main job for the tank is manage the tank room. The boss room. The boss will create a slam which will create a puddle in the ground. And that will be what will cause that the tank have to move the boss around the room. This will be very important for later on when it does the refueling protocol, which it will spawn orbs across the room that will go towards the boss, which your job as a DPS as a tank will be to soak them. It is very important that you do not soak a lot of them. It creates a heavy dot on you, and it can kill you if you take many. This dot, you cannot dispel it. So you soak 3 orbs and you die. The healer cannot do anything, cannot dispel you. That dot is something that you will basically have to immune or try to survive it if you by mistake soak many orbs. It's very important during refueling protocol that you use your CDs, if you can. There are gonna be some mana worms around the room that you can use, and you can stack with increased damage. Then you can try and DPS as much as possible. It's I recommend that you use those mana worms packs with the boss, even if it does a AoE damage. It's a damage buff that benefits a lot for the boss. A part of the slam, which is a AoE knockback, it does a lot of heavy AoE damage on the group. Be careful with that. And there is an ability called Ethereal Circles, which is a root which you can freedom or disengage a shift. It will always appear on 2 players, so you can always dispel one and use a mobility on one of them that you can remove a root on. Otherwise, the player will stay rooted until you dispel it. This is one of the hardest in this dungeon. Is basically because you will have to manage what is called a running mark. This will target 2 players at a time, and it's basically a dot on you, which it doesn't go away. The only way that you can remove this is by stepping into the dome, which will cause an AoE damage, and also it will cause these paddles around, as you can see. The main thing that you need to do as to manage this mechanic is to not go 2 at the same time. You need to go different times to remove this debuff. It does a very heavy AoE damage, which right now it doesn't seem so much, but in a high key it will. Also take notice that is 2 sets of this. So on the first set, it will target 2 players, but the first set is always the most dangerous one because the dome appears a few seconds after. So basically the first set of these 2, you will have to commit a defensive because you will do it slower. Yes. Exactly. This area thingy, is the runic mark. And it's basically to visualize that you have it. So only the player with the red circle steps into the dome. It also slows you a bit when you remove the debuff. So be mindful of that. And as well, when you remove it, it will cause this explosion, right? And it will cause these puddles around the room. There is 2 sets of this. So the first one is the most dangerous one because the dome is not initially there. He cast an ability that makes this dome to spawn. After it happens twice, this ability, like this runic mark thing. After a while, it will cause this power silence, which is basically a casting ability that you cannot interrupt. The only way you can avoid it is to step into the dome right before the cast goes off, so you don't get silenced. If you don't go in, you will practically just take a debuff that it will silence you. Basically, you cannot do anything. It will as well, after the bow silence, the dome will disappear and he will recast it again. And then it will be repeat again of the mechanics that I just mentioned. So the dome in the fight, it will disappear and appear again. And these runic marks will all come again. So there will be 2 sets of this, one at 2 players and the second one. The second one is the easiest because the dome is already there, but the first set of runic marks are the hardest because you will have to have them for a bit before he spawns this dome. And then you can do you remove them. There is a hastening word. This is a purge. You can purge this spell. Just be mindful that it's a buff that the boss have. Enable, yes, is for the tank basically. Okay. Now I'm gonna explain Gemellus. This is one of the people of the bosses that people have problems understanding, and I can understand a bit why. This is a squid that will basically duplicate. In mythic difficulty, it does like twice. It does 1 extra time, so it duplicates in a certain times. All of them share health, so DPS them. There is an important ability here, which is basically neural link. It's this ability that you see on the GIF. I wanted to visualize it as good as possible, especially because you are linked to a specific ad. Not all players have this ability, but all of them will be linked to a person. And it is basically important because, as you can see on the frames, this mouse will gain like a shield, which absorbs damage. But you can remove it by running into the targeted ad that you have. And how you know that you are targeted with the ad is basically you have an arrow towards the ad that you are linked to, and that ad and you have a red circle in the ground. You can see he's targeted here, but he also have like a red circle around the person and the ad that he has to go as well. So it's very easy to spot. And you have the arrow in the ground telling you which one you have to go. Apart that the ad itself, it will like illuminate a bit red for you. It is very important that you do it because it will remove the absorb shield that it has. There is another mechanic in this boss though, which is called the grasp, and it's a different mechanic. It's the one that the ads try to drag you in. You will take AoE damage, and you should avoid being close to it or like being dragged in, because it does a lot of heavy damage on you, especially if you're like being dragged into the ad. So I will basically run away, and in here I will use a defensive and a heal CD for that. And the last mechanic here that I will point out is the void secretion one. This is basically like a stack and move ability. This will spawn like some pools in the ground. You will take some damage, and then you will spawn those puddles that will have to just move away from. And we go to the last boss now. This is the Gentrius. It's what we call the volleyball boss. It will basically make people that they have to pass a ball around the room. This ball is being bounced when you step in this swirly. So it's very important that you don't miss it and you stand on it so the ball bounces. If the ball is not bounced up, the group take a huge damage over time AoE, which practically, if you don't use a healing CD, you can basically die from it, especially if you miss several in a row. So the main mechanic as a DPS here, or like anybody, is to not let the ball touch the floor. And you do it by standing in those void circles. There's another mechanic to think about, is the one that here with these spikes coming at a player, it will come on several players at a time. And it ramps up. So you start having one, and then after, when you have all of them of this line in all directions, then you know that you're gonna shoot orbs. These orbs does damage to them. If you step in, if you get, you don't dodge it, you will take damage, and it will root you as well. It will, it's not a root, it's more like a slow. So I will avoid it, try to dodge the orbs, and I will be very careful with all the other people around. But it's also very easy to know when the orbs are gonna shoot, because it's not as soon as possible. As soon as you have all those spikes around you, that it shoots the orbs. So you don't do it as soon as you start with one. Start until you have all those that it shoots the orbs. And then the main tank ability is this entropy blast. You will have an area on you, but this paddle that you see here in the image is from this entropy blast when the healer dispels you. So if you want, you can always try make it a bit of the room. You see the circle of the boss is quite big. The red circle is, the area that you can be melee of. So you can be a bit like here. And then drop the paddle. He did that, right? He went here, I dispel him, and he came back here. So that paddle only appears when I dispel him. When the healer dispel the tank, or you dwarf it. But the paddle doesn't appear until the debuff that you get from the tank hit is dispelled. So you already know how you can manage that paddle in the ground. And yeah, that was this dungeon. Somebody have any question? And we're coming now to Windrunner Spire. This is another of the Midnight Dungeons. We start with the first boss, which is the Dragon Hawk, called Emberdawn. This is a heavy damage boss. Main of the problems that it has is the intermission that this have, is the Burning Gale. It is like a frontal kind of in a circle intermission, which you will have to avoid. And at the same time, you take damage, heavy AoE damage. So I will suggest as a healer to save the CD for the intermission, as it's the one that you take the most AoE damage from the party. And it will spawn as well these kind of tornadoes. The tank doesn't have heavy damage on this boss. It has this Saron beak. It is not very big as other bosses does to tanks, so it's not that heavy damage on tanks, but it's the only ability that you will feel in danger, so it's very important to use any mitigation for it. Tanks doesn't have any other mechanic in this boss apart of that, so they don't have any other mechanic to think about. However, the DPSers and healers will have this called Flaming Updraft, which is this red circle around you. It will drop a patch of fire, and it will also spawn these fire tornadoes. So it's very I recommend these place these patches outside of the room, so you don't, especially during the intermission, you want to do not have any of this in the floor, so you can move and do an intermission without a problem. The second boss is the duo. There are different health pools, so be mindful to DPS them at the same time. I mean, so even them out. They have independent health pools, have different abilities. Splattering Spear is the one that with the green circles that spawn a puddle in the ground that doesn't go away after a long time, so manage the room accordingly to the puddles. Try to move together is a very good recommendation here. It has an ability as well, Curse of Darkness. This is from the ghost. It spawns 2 ads, but this is a curse thing that is spawned on 2 players. If you have a curse dispeller, you just dispel it and the ad will disappear. Otherwise, if you don't have a curse dispel, what you can do is CC the ad. You can stun it, and it will basically just let it the curse run out, and as soon as the curse runs out, the ad will disappear. You cannot do anything else apart of that. The ad does like a fixation thing, so it will go to the person the curse has. So if you have the curse, the ad will run to you. So try not to be meleeed by it. The most important ability here is the Heavy Yank. It's the one that you see here in the GIF in the middle. It's basically the combo that happens that the ghosts start having this Shriek ability, which is a heavy AoE damage. This is a casting ability that you cannot interrupt, and you have to interact with this hook to interrupt this casting ability. So what you have to do is to stand behind the ghost, so the other boss hooks the ad. How much space? Or a long... It takes a lot of time. We went through the whole balcony. It's basically until the entrance that you come from, you can be with the boss. It's like you come from a small room. Basically until that, you can be with the boss. This ghost boss as well has a Shadow Bolt ability, which will cast through the fight, and you will have to basically interrupt it. It does a lot of damage. And then the big tank ability in this boss comes from the Bone Hack. Bone Hack, sorry. It's the big ability. And be mindful that if you kill the big guy before or right when this ability happens, you will have the ghost casting endlessly. So it's very important that you DPS them evenly. We have now the third boss, which is the Commander Krolok. It's like a ghost warrior style. It has very important abilities, which is called Reckless Leap. This can be seized. It's always going on the furthest target. So it's a circle around you, which it will give a dot like a bleed physical kind of debuff thing around that area. So it's very important that you don't not have anybody else around you, and you have like some sort of defensive, because it's not only the leap, it's also the physical dot that you get from it. At the same time that this leap happens, it will come swirless in the ground. So be mindful about it. What people are gonna do in dungeons basically is that the furthest target firstly, and then let the tank take the second leap by being the furthest away. And basically rotate the leaps. You can cheese them already because it will always go to the furthest target. So if you have a defensive or some kind of immunity, you can just be very far away. When this mechanic is happening, the boss will leap to you. It's only a combo of 2 leaps every time. So you know already when it's about to happen, it happens just twice. There's another ability called Intimidating Shout. This is what people might have problems with sometimes, because people think that it's a spread mechanic, but it's a stack mechanic. Otherwise, it comes with a fear. If you don't stack with somebody, you can stack 2 players. So if you are ranged players, you can stack 2 players is enough. And then as long as you are 2 together, you can you will not get feared. But it's very important that you are not alone in this fear mechanic thingy. Yeah. At 66 and 33% will be the rallying below, which is basically it will spawn ads around the room. And there is one ad which will cast an ability which you have to interrupt. And it will also fixate a random player. And it will do like a Blade Storm ability. You can just run around the room and try not to be where the ads are, if you can. You can cleave still the boss, he's not immune. But the boss just blades and does AoE, so if you're a melee, just run a bit away. And no, not what I know of. It will do as well very heavy damage, so you won't be able to leave it on melee. You can cleave the boss, but it does not damage the ads, I believe. Not what I noticed, at least. We had to cleave down the ads a lot. I might be wrong though. I'm not 100% that it does cleave the ads though. And then it has the tank. It did for me? Oh, okay. And it does it. I wasn't sure if it did actually kill the ads, but in a very heavy, in a high key, you'd barely notice the damage, so I wasn't sure of that. You have still to kill them a lot. Then you have the Rampage, is the only ability that the tank will have to take care of, and is the only cost on the tank. And then you have the last boss, which is the Restless Heart. There is one thing important for tanks here, is the Ghost Strike, which is a knockback and damage taken, increase physical, and then it's very important to use a big defensive or personal here, because it will do very heavy on the tanks here. And as well, commit externals if you have a healer that can give you external. Their main abilities here is to manage the arrows, which will spawn in the room. And what it does is that during the bullseye wind blast, which is the wave here that you see in the middle, you use the arrow to jump and avoid the mechanic. Otherwise, you will basically tick down because it does very heavy damage to you. So you will have basically to use the arrows to avoid this beam, this wave. There's another important thing that is called gust shot. It's in mythic difficulty. You will notice when you step on an arrow, it will spawn these souls around the room. You can clear them with this gust, which are these circles. It does a lot of damage, so do not stack these circles. Try to spread and try to as well clear the room from these souls in the room. And the boss as well does this ability called Squall Leap, which is a dot. But the only way you can remove this is either immune it or use an arrow. It is very important to manage this. Try to it happens twice before, one during the boss and then during the wave, and then it will happen again. So it is one and it happens twice, and then you have to basically step on an arrow every time, because the higher you're doing in plus, you won't be able to manage the dot, and it stacks if you don't remove them. And the other important thing here is the Volgel, which is targeted at a random player, and is a cone that it will target at a random player that you will have to be away from the group. And it does a bit of a knockback, in a pushback, I will call it, more than knockback. So be mindful of that one too. And it does damage to you as well while the boss channels this to you. Overall, this dungeon, the packs have a lot of mechanics. There are a lot of important casts. One important ones are there are some mini bosses in some of the areas, but they are very similar to the bosses. There is a ghost that you have to basically DPS down the shield to interrupt it, and then there's as well a very important mob, which are these small dragon hawks, which will target a random player and fire speed. This is a channel cast that will you will drop low from it, and the only way you can interrupt it by is in the mob. You cannot interrupt it otherwise. It's very important. If you see one of these hawks doing fire speed cast, the only way that you can interrupt it is by stun it or blind it or something like that. And we're going now through the last one of this Maisara Caverns. Somebody has a question for Windrunner. Otherwise, this will be the last dungeon from the pool that we will go through. And we will... It's also a midnight dungeon. So the first boss here, before reaching the first boss, you will have to release some prisoners. It is only possible to free those prisoners by clicking on them out of combat. It's very important that you do not keep ninja pulling a lot, or chain pulling the mobs in the first area, because you will have to run back otherwise to free the prisoners to trigger this boss. It's the biggest tip I can give for the trash mobs. This boss is complicated. It's also like the one in Windrunner. They have independent health pools. So you will have to kill them at the same time. Otherwise, it does a different ability. In comparison with Windrunner Spire, what it happens is that if you kill the bird before the boss troll, it will revive the bird again. And if you kill the boss before the bird, it's just increased damage done to you. The bird will do more damage to you, like enrages. So if I prefer, I will kill more. I will kill, if you cannot kill them at the same time for whatever reason happens, try to kill the troll before the bird, because you can afford a bit of damage from the bird if the boss troll dies. But it's very annoying if the other boss revives the pet. Otherwise, this boss does two main abilities to think of. The main one is the one that you see here, which is the carrion swoop. And it's basically the bird pet will do this green arrow at a certain player, and it will basically charge towards the player. If you step on the trap, it will basically do that. It will stun the bird. It's very important to do that because it does a huge knockback otherwise to you. So it's very good, like you step in the trap and then let it charge it to it. After that is been charged, you will have to move away because it will spawn a puddle of ice under. So be mindful of that. During barrage, which is a cone here, as you see in this image here, in the bottom right. It's like a cone of like shooting towards a random player. It's a root, dispellable, but you can also use a unroot ability like freedom, disengage, shapeshift. Works as well. If you don't have any of those, you can just dispel it. Important with this though is a channeling barrage. So try to not be with other player, because any player that is also in that cone will also get this debuff dispellable root thing and damage as well. So in this boss, it's very important to not be stuck together so much, because this barrage is aimed at a random player. Other than that, the most important thing, apart of the swoop, is the fetid Wheelstorm, which is a AoE damage kind of thing, but also spawns pools in the ground, as you can see here. These puddles kills you. So as a player, I will absolutely, my top priority will be not to be in one of these. Like, I think nobody can survive. As you can see, in this whole thing, we had a player that died from it. So I will not recommend to stand in any of these battles. So you cannot afford the damage from them. It one-shots you. The other abilities, like the charge thing, you see here from the bird, you can leave them without a problem. It does like still a knockback and damage, but it is not as heavy as these paddles here. The paddle, you basically die from it. And the other important ability here is the flank spear that is from the hunter boss. This hit with a knockback, so be mindful that this ability, and if you are in a freezing trap around you, like be careful with that. As a tank, you can easily get trapped if you have that ability on you and there is a trap nearby or behind you. Now we go with the second boss. This is a very hard boss because you have mechanics, but you have also these kind of rod fights which you are ticking down all the time. You are all the time ticking down, but it's very important in this boss to do this add mechanic. She will spawn 4 different ghosts in 4 corners all the time in the same place. You will know directly where they come from. The main thing here is that you try to make these 2 ghosts collide to each other. We will gain a debuff based on how many you have popped up. So you don't want to pop all of them at the same time. So you just do it in 2 sets of 2 adds touching each other and then on the next one. It's very important to do this though before the intermission phase, because on the intermission phase that you see here with the orbs here, we do take a lot more damage as well, and you will have the DPS are busy because in the intermission phase here, she will have a shield that you have to try to DPS down. It's very important for this that all the ghosts are like removed beforehand. Otherwise, it gets very chaotic. It's a fight that stresses out the healer a lot. Because it does a lot of damage all the time, and it's even more with these abilities that increase damage, even with these dots that we get. So your healer will thank you if you do these mechanics in a well-timed matter thing. You can see here as well, you can do anything with your adds. You can ring them so they go together. You can grip them. Be careful with that though. And you can also paralyze them or freeze them. During the intermission though, apart that you will have to commit healing CDs on this as well, because it can be very heavy damage. You need to be mindful that there are gonna be these floating orbs around the room. Those you cannot take. They also these kind of mechanics that will these are kill mechanics. So if you take an orb, you kind of die. So it's very important to dodge the orbs here. They nerfed a bit how it works, so there are not so many orbs, and you can kind of see the pattern where they go to, so you can know or move accordingly to the orbs. But also be mindful that during all these mechanics that you see here, it's gonna come something called unmake, and this is the frontal that you see. It will come at a certain direction or player. I don't know if it's player-based or I think it's player-based, but it's random. You don't know where it goes. Where it spawns in the first place, but you see this cone appearing, and then it will go in a direction. It does not do a full circle, it just goes for a bit in a direction and then she stops. But this will happen during the mechanics, so be mindful that while we are managing the adds, this frontal will appear. And you cannot like it doesn't go on the tank, the frontal is random. Yeah, exactly, it's that one. It's the theater open last boss mechanic. And this is the last boss. Raktul, the Vessel of Soul, have some mechanics that you need to take care of. It's very important how you do this will make it easier for you or harder. We start with this paddle here that you see here up in the image. This is attack mechanic that does the Spirit Breaker, which is a hit with a knockback. Be mindful, it's a knockback, so you can get knocked off to areas where you can die. You can even get sent to the realm of the dead, so very careful where you are with your tank here. We had tested it, and yes, it went out of the room sometime, and the tank died. Be mindful that this tank hit will appear a puddle under, which you basically will have to manage during the phase, because it will, it does kind of heavy damage. In the setting that you are now, you can maybe afford to take tick damage, but you won't in the hierarchy you go. It is very important to manage this mechanic, because right after this, you will do this crush shoal mechanic, which will target 3 players, which it will jump, as you can see. And it will spawn a circle on the player that he's jumping to, and that area will spawn a totem. It's after. As you can see here in the GIF here, it's right after he comes back from it. When the tank lands, is when the paddle it usually does like in the boss where you are. You see the paddle spawns. No, the knockback doesn't. I don't think it's spawned on the tank. It's something that he does with the. It's like a slam. I don't know if they change it with this, but when we had it, it spawned on the boss. Because the boss doesn't move. It is important regarding the Crush of Shoal that everybody are together, because this area that the boss leaps to where it spawns a totem, it will be very important because it does later the Soulbind totem thing, which basically will drag in 3 random players, and it causes a lot of damage to them as well. So like you need to try and DPS the totems as soon as possible. So the main tactic here is trying to spawn the totems close to each other so you can clip them down, and so they are basically killed before being there for too long there. They don't despawn, so you need to DPS them down. This is practically the phase. Then it does an intermission during the first phase, which is here with the totems. It's very important that you don't use any CD. This is because when we go to this realm of ghost, is that we are gonna do the interrupt this kind of malignant souls, which will give us a kind of a debuff, which will increase our damage to the boss. So we will save CDs and Bloodlust for after doing all this interrupting or CC. You can stamp them as well. So you gain 6 stacks. There are a total of 6, I believe, or something like that. But try to be close to the ad when they interrupt it. It has a range, so there has been cases that people try to go up the stairs and interrupt the last ad, but they don't gain the last stack. It has limited range. I don't know how big is the range, but be mindful to not be very up the stairs when they do that. And when you are done interrupting all these ghosts, that you go in and use your cities, and you will basically melt the boss during that. You have some seconds with this debuff, so it is when you use all your cooldowns and bloodlust, and then it's repeat all over again. I recommend a lot doing that. For we did like a 15, and they basically melted in that phase with the 6 stacks and the bloodlust. So you can avoid a lot of time. It's very rare you go twice if you use your cities by then. Other than that, this kind of trash in this dungeon are not that... they don't have a lot of casts, I will say. There are some mobs that you can purge and it does an AoE. And then there are some mobs that have like some kind of root dispellable thing. Exactly. You need to be mindful of the ghosts. They also root you. These ghosts are also in the dungeon. As well in the boss fight. This ghost does as well an AoE when you step into them, a part of the root that you can dispel or use freedom. A part of that, there is a mini boss before the second boss, this mini boss, it does this ability that at some time at a player, it will put them in an altar. That altar can be also a root effect. You can use a freedom kind of ability or Tiger Lust, and it will remove them from the altar as well. Other than that, before this last boss, it's called, I don't call it a gauntlet per se, but there are 3 big ghost hands that spawn like a huge wave of big green stones that goes towards one direction. I will practically avoid to stand in the middle of the pathway towards the last boss. I will go on the edges of this pathway. It's very easy to get into one of those rocks on the way. And other than that, this is the whole seminar. I wanted to thank a person because all these visuals that you see here are from his videos that he allowed me to use. And he also have a lot of his videos online. He goes more in depth. I recommend going to his YouTube. He does have an M+ seasonal guide for every individual dungeon. So you can check it out more in depth there. And if you have any more questions or you wonder about anything, about any of the dungeons or any pack or